Do you want a podcast episode where it's not 40 to 50 minutes long? Well, today might be your day. What is going on? Thank you for taking time to listen to the podcast episode of The Talkin Block with your podcast host, Nate Larrier, which is me. We're back with another night, and a special night because it is TTP at night. And this is something that I'm going to do all the time. I just thought I found it really cool last week, so I thought I'd do it again this week. Probably will hold off from doing it again for a couple weeks or so because I feel like this is more like a special occasion at the same time, just when I feel like I'm really in the mood to do it. But today's neither one of those days. Today's just I felt lazy and I did not really want to record at all today. And you'll see that on ESPN on the Talkin Block because you'll see why. But before we get into anything, I do want to clarify something. The Talkin Block is the name of the podcast, so wherever you hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Radio Public, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your audio podcast from, and here on YouTube, the title is The Talkin Block. TTB is just every letter stripped from, the first letter stripped from each word. TTB, The Talkin Block. But Toast to Becoming is not the title of the podcast. It's just, I would say, the moral, the code, what the podcast lives by. So toast to becoming to being better, toast to becoming to more greater things, toast to becoming to achievements, toast to becoming to just whatever it is that is good in life. It's not the name of the podcast, just what the podcast and what I decided to tie the podcast with. But without, yeah. But with that out the way, I just did want to clarify that because I have been getting people ask questions about it. You know, what's the title of the podcast, or is this the title? What's this? You know, da 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 da. So I did want to clarify that. Again, it's late. It's 11:30 p.m. So bear with me. As you saw in the little snippet, I'm hoping that this is no more than 20 minutes long, maybe like 25 at the most. So without further ado, let's get into Poem of the Day. Poem of the Day is written by your podcast host himself because he just did not feel like looking one up. He did not want to get into all that nitty gritty stuff. So why not talk about a poet that he actually knows and can understand easily because it's written by himself. All right. So today's Poem of the Day is written by your podcast host once again. And you know that I don't like to write titles for him. So on here it says Poem 10. So Poem 10 says, my dad bought a punching bag. I punched it once and said, Dad, I'm a fighter. He looked at me and said, no, you're not. I was in distraught. You're telling your 4-year-old son he's not a fighter. It hurts. He got down on my level, looked at me with eyes. He told me something that's never left my soul. He said, you're not a fighter. A fighter doesn't punch a bag once and say he's going to win a fight. He goes back every day and he hits harder every time. I didn't understand at the age of adolescence, but as I got older, it made more sense. He was trying to tell me a fighter keeps going. They don't stop at one punch, at one win, even at one loss. They're a fighter because they get up every day and they take the punches of their opponents, whether that be human or life. Both will give you hell of a blow. Those simple words are what made me take my journey, my will to go. Once again, that is written by your podcast host, Nate. And in that time, I wrote that because the podcast was going on a decline. There wasn't a lot of listeners, wasn't a lot of followers, wasn't a lot of interactions with the audience. I was like, what in the world? I feel like I don't want to go anymore. But in that time, I had to think, just because today, or just because this week, or just because this time period, there's not a lot of listeners, doesn't mean that later on that there won't be, or later on there won't be a lot of interactions, or later on there won't be this, that, and such or the other. So it was just really about, at that time, I had to take the blows of not being able to be successful in that moment and just continue to fight on, as you see here today. So that is Poem 10, written by your podcast host, Nate Larrier. On to the big guns, the big shows, the big everything. ESPN on the Talking Block. I forgot you gotta turn my head this way. But as you can see, we already got TTB's tally up there because, like I said, I've been real lazy and just didn't feel like doing anything. Not much this week to talk about. I really wanted to talk about the games that I found interesting. On the board, what does it say? 7 points because the Cowboys beat the Giants 20-15. Bengals versus the Panthers. The Bengals defense decided to come up and show out today. I really did think that the Panthers were going to win, but don't get me wrong. What's his name? That's how tired I am. Can't even think of it off the bat. Dalton was looking pretty good. I don't think that there's anything wrong with Dalton. The defense did slip up this week, and they just look at the old Panthers defense, but I'm pretty sure they'll get it back in the game and look good next week, possibly. But Panthers offense, they looked good. It was just, you're going against the Bengals. T. Higgins had a good game. Hubbard also for the Panthers had a good game. And that was all I got for that. As for the Saints and Falcons, Alvin Kamara. One thing about this game was the Falcons won 26-24, but it's mainly because they knew who the star player was. When the Saints did this the first week, it was nice. When they did it the second week, it was nice. When they did it the third week, it was like, okay, we get it. Now going to the fourth week, it's like, there's no surprise. Alvin Kamara was leading the offense, and the Falcons, they caught on to that, and they were able to stop almost every offensive play that the Saints were throwing that week. So I think that's why the Falcons won. Falcons got a touchdown off of a kick return, which was pretty cool. Algieri, nice game for him. And so did, I'm going to probably pronounce this incorrectly, but I think it's Younghoe Koo. Had a nice game. He ended up helping the Falcons win the game with the last field goal of that game. Jaguars versus the Texans. I'm not surprised about this game. Jaguars are 0-4 now, and they just suck right now this season. Texans won 24-20, so that's that. Broncos versus the Jets. I wrote this down and I watched the game because I found it pretty interesting that the Jets lost. Granted, it was 10-9, so it wasn't like a fair beating, but it just, hey, I don't know what it was, but Aaron Rodgers just was not in the game this week, and it showed a lot. And that's all right. Hopefully they get back together next week. Vikings versus the Packers. I said the Vikings were going to win. Not surprised that they did not win, if that made sense. I'm surprised that they... Never mind, I realized what I said and rephrased that, run that back. I'm not surprised that they won. Yeah, there we go. I'm not surprised they won 31-29. Packers are good. They took Malik Willis out, which was a pretty big shocker. Jordan Love was in the game. Jordan Love still looks good. Granted, he was out for injury, but after the way that Malik Willis was playing, I would have expected them to, give him a little bit more play time, give Jordan Love some rehabilitation time just to get back into the game like he should be. But hey, that's what they wanted to do, and that was the result. So, I mean, hey, you went against the Vikings. I honestly think that the Packers could have won if they had put Malik Willis in. Granted, I still had the Vikings winning, but Packers could have won if they had Malik Willis. That's all I'm going to say about that. Colts versus Steelers. I wrote this down because I found it a little surprising. I thought the Steelers were going to win. They were 3-0 going into that game. They're now 3-1. The Colts won 27-24. Joe Flacco put up in the game. He was looking pretty good at his age. Another oldie out there. But it was just really, it's not that the Steelers looked bad. It was careless mistakes and not blocking your quarterback. I know that the center at one point in one play in the game, he had snapped the ball too high and Justin Fields had to jump up for it. And I think that resulted in him losing the ball and then going back some yards. So it was just careless mistakes that game. It wasn't that the offense was terrible. Defense could have been a lot better. But yeah, Colts just, once they realized that it was up from there, and the Colts just kept the defense on them. Rams versus the Bears, we're not going to talk about it. At this point, I don't know what it was that I'm just going to say that it's because all of the primary players are injured, and that's where I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't know. To let Caleb Williams beat you the way that he's been looking but hey, it is what it is. They won. The Bears won 24. Rams had 18. Eagles versus the Buccaneers. Not much on here either. I think, again, it is primarily because the star players are injured. Swift was out this game. A.J. Brown is still out. Saquon Barkley was in. I think all the good tight ends were in too. But, your two primary receivers, you now have no throw game, and you can't always depend on Saquon Barkley to run the ball because they're just eventually going to stop that. So I think that the Buccaneers won primarily off of the star players being injured. Of course, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were leading the offense, so there was that. 49ers versus the Patriots. The 49ers won. They got 30-13. Commanders won 42-14 against the Cardinals. Chiefs won 17-10. The only reason I'm going to talk about the Chiefs real quick is because Patrick Mahomes ended up taking out Rashee Rice, while losing the ball to an interception and trying to tackle the defender. So Rashee Rice is out for probably a good little minute. And it seemed like Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes got their relationship back. So I guess that's a good thing. Raiders versus the Browns. The Raiders won 20-16. Ravens versus the Bills. This was something. Derrick Henry, again, being utilized like he should have. Granted, I'm always going to be in favor of Josh Allen. I've said this since the beginning of time. I'm a Josh Allen fan. But the Ravens were looking good. They were looking like regular Ravens that they should have defensively and offensively. There's not a lot from Zay Flowers this week. Also, not a lot from what's his name? Tight end. I can't think of his name. But you guys know what I'm talking about. But Derrick Henry got all the show, and the Baltimore Ravens were just putting stops to the Bills offense. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Bills still look good, and I think that they are still a playoff contender. But it was just they met their match this time, and their match was pretty good this week. And I also think that it just has to go in the fact that the Ravens have not been, square this past couple weeks. So for them to be able to win against the Cowboys, come back, look even better this week, I think that they're getting back into their game, and that's what matters most for the Ravens. Titans versus the Dolphins. Titans won, Dolphins lost. I don't remember the score. I forgot to write it down, but that's all right because it's not surprising. I did say that the Dolphins wouldn't win. I did have favor in the Dolphins only because of their star players, but when you look at it, if you have no quarterback to aid to those star players, just like if you have no star players to aid to your quarterback, what are you going to do? So it's not surprising. I mean, Levis, as much as he is trashed this past 2 weeks, I mean, he was able to get it together and win against the Dolphins. Lastly but not least, the Lions versus Seahawks. David Montgomery was leading the offense. Jared Goff, 18 for 18 pass completions and a touchdown. Seahawks, I don't know. They weren't looking off. Defense was slipping a little bit, but at the same time, just like with kind of with a couple of teams, just like with the Ravens and then the Colts, primarily the Colts, that's what the Lions were looking like against the Seahawks. They were just shutting down every play that they could get. DK Metcalf was leading the offense, but at the same time, it was like the big names just weren't showing up a lot this week. I don't know what it was, but I mean, hopefully they get better next week, which leaves a lot of teams. There's only 2 teams that are 4-0 at this current moment, and a lot of teams that will be battling it out for playoff spots, honestly. As we get into that, week 5, like I said, I'm trying to make this podcast episode real quick, real spicy, but real nice and real fast. Going into week 5, Buccaneers versus the Falcons. Bucks are 3-1. Falcons are 2-2. I'm gonna give it to the Falcons. I think that the Falcons are gonna win. Oh, just in case you're new to the podcast, when I say week 5, that just means that I'm about to talk about every game that is going on during week 5, and we're gonna talk about who's gonna win, who I think is gonna win. Jets versus the Vikings. Vikings are one of the 2 teams that are 4-0, and they're going against the Jets, which are 2-2. Obviously, Vikings. Bears versus the Panthers. Bears are 2-2. Panthers are 1-3. Honestly, I think again Dalton was not looking bad against who was it? Dalton wasn't looking bad against the Bengals. It was just the Bengals are a lot better in that stage. So I'm still going to give it to the Panthers. I think that they can pull it up the bag against the Bears. Browns versus the Commanders. Browns are 1-3. Commanders are 3-1. Commanders all the way. Jane Daniels is getting Rookie of the Year. There is no absolute ifs, ands, buts about it. He's getting Rookie of the Year. Dolphins 1-3. Patriot against the Patriots, which are also 1-3. I'm gonna give it to the Patriots. I think that without Tua, without a good quarterback, the Dolphins are just not getting anywhere. Colts versus the Jags. Jags are 0-4. The Colts are 2-2. Giving it to the Colts. Bills versus the Texans. Both teams are 3-1. I think this is going to be a good matchup, but I think that Josh Allen, after this week, he's going to go back and revise a lot of things, and he's just going to take that win. Ravens versus the Bengals. Ravens are 2-2. Bengals are 1-3. Ravens. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that. I'd be surprised if the Ravens lose, honestly. Raiders versus the Broncos. Both teams are 2-2. I'm gonna give it to the Broncos. Raiders, as good as they think they are, as good as they've been looking, or against the Ravens or whatever, I don't think that they have it in them to beat the Broncos. The Broncos are looking a lot better. And my bad to Bo Nix about talking trash about him. I still think that Zach Wilson would be a lot big of a favorable quarterback, but Bo Nix is doing his job, I guess. So go Bo Nix. Seahawks versus the Giants. There is no ifs, ands, buts about this one. Seahawks are 3-1. Giants are 1-3. Again, I'll be surprised if the Seahawks lose, but I'm giving it to the Seahawks. Packers versus the Rams. Rams are 1-3. Packers are 2-2. I'm giving it to the Packers. If we don't have our star players, there's no winning with this, especially with the way that the Packers are looking. Cowboys versus Steelers. Cowboys are 2-2. Steelers are 3-1. Giving it to the Steelers. I think that the Steelers are going to take away the win versus the Cowboys. Saints versus the Chiefs. Chiefs are the second team that is 4-0, obviously. And the Saints are 2-2. I mean, we can all guess who's going to win this game. The Chiefs. And then the Cardinals versus the 49ers. 49ers are 2-2. Cardinals are 1-3. I'm getting it to the 49ers. And this week, Eagles, Titans, Chargers, and Lions are on bye, so they will not be playing, but hopefully they play next week. And that is everything on the ESPN Talkin Block. On to the news.
Audio Jungle.
Got a couple things for you. I think the biggest thing is a historic strike is underway at the U.S. ports, and the impact of global supply chains could be huge. If you don't know what's going on, basically, I think it's 45,000 port dock workers are going on strike because they just want a $5 raise. Literally $5 is all they're asking for. And because they are not going to get it, they are stopped working. And what that means for the economy is that, and granted, I don't want to scare anybody because it's not scary. Many companies have known about this. This strike has been brought up months before it's been going on. It's just because it's finally not getting the attention that it needs, people are going to do what they got to do. So many businesses have went into proactive and been able to stock up on certain things, but prices are going to go up. Gas is going to go up. Eventually things are going to run off the shelves and they're not going to be accessible until these dock workers are able to get their raise, and then soon enough we are able to get those shipments in. So for about possibly a week, hopefully no more than a week, because many people are saying that it's not going to last long, especially when you think about it. It's an economy that we are putting into danger. Because when you think about it, as much as going on in as much as going on in Europe, as much as going on in the United States itself, as much as going on in the world, there's no way that we are going to be able to run off of nothing. So, at least for a week, many people are thinking it's just going to be high prices and very little accessible things that you might need. On the other side of things, we do want to talk about what is going on in Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, with Hurricane Helene. What's covered here on CNN Weather is at least 130 people have died across 6 states, and officials fear the death toll can rise. Many more remain missing, perhaps unable to leave their location or unable to contact family, where communication infrastructure is shredded. Hundreds of roads remain closed, especially in the Carolinas, hampering the delivery of badly needed supplies, and more than 2 million customers remain without power, according to Power Outage US. There's a medium chance a new storm develops in the western Caribbean of Gulf of Mexico later this week. It's too early to know where it will go from there, so anyone near the Gulf will need to monitor the forecast. President Joe Biden will visit some of the affected communities later this week, as soon as it will not disrupt emergency response operations, the White House said. Presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have expressed condolences to those affected by Hurricane Helene and the receiving recovery briefing for ways to help those left in Hurricane's aftermath. Visit CNN Impact the World. Bookmark CNN's Light Site for fast connectivity. I know that where I am in North Carolina, Asheville is absolutely off the map, completely flooded, no ways to reach them. I know they are internet like they're underwater at this point. So just be in prayer for all the communities. Actually, as we speak about it, I just want to, I'm gonna do it. Father God, we thank you for today, for the life that you have given us, and we just ask that you protect everybody that has been affected, that you give them hope, that you give them peace, that you give them the supplies that they need, and for the emergency responders, that you just able to get aid to them in any ways that possible to help these people and make them feel at peace, to make them feel joy, to make them feel at ease. Father God, we know that you're doing works. We know that you're doing wonders. So I just ask that you just do what you do, and that you protect everybody, whether it be from these new storms, whether it be from the storm that has just passed. You just protect us all in your love and grace in Jesus' name. I pray. But make sure that you're keeping everybody covered. Make sure that you are checking up on those that have been affected, that you know that are in these states. So like Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. And even if it isn't in, even if you know that that city has not been affected, check on somebody that knows people in those areas. So like, you don't have to, where I live, I'm not affected, but check on people that it's okay to check on me, to make sure that I don't know anybody in those areas, because you never know. You just never know, and especially for a storm that we were not expecting to be as bad as it was. Just make sure that you're checking up on people, and make sure that you're doing your best to keep prepared, to stay safe, and all of that. Lastly, on the Black news, we want to talk about a woman with sickle cell disease celebrates 80th birthday, defying life expectancy odds by decades. If you do not know what sickle cell is, how did I miss that? Let me just type in this beautiful thing right here. But some facts about sickle cells is that 1 in 13 Black people are diagnosed, and the average life is 20 years. And from this woman, she said that she has survived so long because she is drinking gallons of water every day, and she was not afraid to hide it. That was her advice to everybody that is going through it, is to not hide the sickle cell disease. As I look this up, sickle cell. I got the S. Sickle cell. If you don't know what sickle cell is, it's a group of inherited red blood cell disorders. Named SCD, the red blood cells become hard and sticky and look like a C-shaped form called. I will post pictures that you can see it right here. And basically what it does is right here. With sickle cell disease, an inherited group of disordered red blood cells confront into a sickle shape. The cells die early, leaving a shortage of healthy red blood cells. Sickle cell anemia can block blood flow, causing pain, sickle cell crisis. Infections, pain, and fatigue are symptoms of sickle cell disease. Treatments include medications, blood transfusions, and rarely a bone marrow transplant. The woman is named Patricia McGill. She was diagnosed at the age of 13. She thought she would die at the age of 30 because at that time, about 20 years is 30. When they say average of 20, it's just 20 plus from the day that you're diagnosed or that it's identified. So 23 would have been her life expectancy. Average. But after that, she went to research. She went to go look up nutrition. She went to go, as I said, she was drinking gallons of water every day. At the age of 13, she was already looking at what the stuff was. And again, she's been in and out of the hospital, but now at the age of 80, she has succeeded the life expectancy. And she's just giving advice and trying to help others. At the same time, many doctors are looking into it to see what exactly it was that has been able to help her survive for so long and able to, do what she's done, hopefully to give information on how to kind of redirect others' life expectancies in the same direction. So we just thank Ms. McGill for that and being such a light and inspiration, understanding that, just because you're diagnosed with something does not mean that it is the end of the world, that it is that diagnosis that you are going to follow the steps of whatever that sickness or disease is. And that is all I got on this podcast. As I look at my phone, it does say 25 minutes, 25 seconds. So I'm glad that I did that. Again, short and sweet, nothing too big, nothing too major. Today's podcast episode, we talked a little about what TTB is, Toast to Becoming, and the Talkin Block. The Talkin Block being the title, TTB being every first letter stripped from the word. We make a shorter version, and Toast to Becoming, the morals, the codes, the how we live by the podcast, just being able to accept better in our lives. 2, Poem of the Day, which was written by me, talking about, being a fighter is not always fighting and taking that one punch, but being able to get back up, being able to, take what life gives you, to being able to take what people around you give you and just running with that at the same time, fighting back when you need to, standing up for yourself when you need to, and at the same time being patient. Because, in boxing, it's not always about how hard you punch. It's not always about how fast you are. It's not always about how many times you get up, but sometimes it's about the patience, waiting for that opportunity, to get your lick back. To the topic of the day, which was ESPN on the Talkin Block. Really short, really simple. Hopefully we'll be back and up and running, talking about all the games next week on week 5. News on the podcast was, making sure that you're checking on your people and making sure that you're being prepared, understanding that, these hurricanes are no joke this year and that they're coming like literally like a rushing wave. So just making sure that you're just doing what you need to. At the same time, understanding that the economy is going to take a little shift with these dock workers going on a little strike, asking just for $5 more. And with that, I do want to let you guys know that, again, I don't bring it up to scare anybody, but what I do is the podcast. Our slogan is, if I can change my mind, that mind will change, those minds will change, so many more will become a chain of change minds. Me telling you is what I'm doing to stick up for us. And what are you doing to stick up for us? Because when you think about it, now that I've told you, you're going to tell somebody else, and somebody else is going to tell somebody else, and somebody's going to tell somebody else. And what happens is eventually it reaches somebody that is directly connected that didn't even know. And I think it's weird because when I was thinking about it, I automatically thought, there's children that have parents that are working this right now with these companies that aren't giving these pays. And what happens is the children know that they're $1 million owners or $1 million multi-millionaires. There we go. But they don't understand how. And what happens is they go to the parents, they ask, well, what's going on? What's the issue with the business? And, the parents are just like, oh, nothing. Don't worry about it. You're too young to understand. And these kids are blindsided. But what happens is when these kids find out, now they speak up. So that's all I'm doing is I'm giving information for it to be passed on to eventually reach somebody that is connected to it directly that can actually make change. And that's all you guys got to do sometimes. Sometimes it's not always about taking the direct hit, but just passing information on and allowing that information to trickle down until it reaches somebody that is able to do something. To Black News, which was Miss, if I can find her name one more time, Patricia McGill, being able to understand that, a disease is not a disease. It doesn't have a hold on you. It might be in your body. It might be of you, but it is not who you are. And that is all I've got on the podcast. Thank you for watching and taking the time to listen to the podcast episode. TTB, Toast to Becoming. If I can change my mind, that mind will change so many more. Those mind will change so many more and become a chain of change minds. I will see you guys next week. I love you. Thank you for love and support. And peace. Good night. A day later, but never a dollar short. Be sure to listen. I almost forgot the most important part. Be sure to listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where you get your audio podcast from. Stay here on YouTube at Talkin Block Live. Follow my Instagram at TheTalkin'Block. And go to check out my TikTok at toast.bbpumping. Love you guys. Thanks for the support. And I got some things coming up, so stay tuned. And officially, I will see y'all next week.